There are places in the world with customs so extreme that they seem like fiction. But this one is real. In one of the most inhospitable regions on the planet, there is a people where women do not bathe, where men can have several wives and may even offer them to visitors as a sign of hospitality. A place where refusing a gesture of welcome can be seen as a serious offense. This is what you will see from now on World No Filter. Want to be part of a journey full of discoveries, fun, and content that will surprise you? Subscribe to our channel by clicking here and don't miss any more videos. You are about to discover Namibia, one of the most extreme and at the same time most fascinating countries on Earth. This is where the legendary Himba tribe lives, known worldwide for their unique beauty, their skin covered with red clay, their houses built with earth and dung, and a way of life that seems to have stopped in time. A people where tradition dictates the rules, where modernity has barely arrived, and where everything works in a way that completely challenges our values. But Namibia goes far beyond that. This is the country of the oldest desert on the planet, with dunes rising over 300 meters high, creating surreal landscapes worthy of horror and science fiction movies. A place of petrified trees, ghost towns swallowed by the sand, and the frightening skeleton coast where the ocean and the desert meet in a deadly landscape. A territory that is beautiful, silent, and extremely dangerous. Throughout this video, you will discover customs that almost no one dares to show, and understand why, in some situations, the question is not whether you want to accept hospitality, but whether you can afford to refuse it. Namibia, officially called the Republic of Namibia, is located in southwestern Africa, a country where the absolute silence of the desert seems to dominate everything until you reach its capital. Windhoek, the largest city in the country, is home to nearly 400,000 inhabitants and pulses with an energy that contrasts sharply with the vast dunes and wild landscapes surrounding it. Here, the desert stays at a distance, and urban life takes control. Walking through its streets, it's impossible not to notice this clash of worlds. Buildings with German colonial architecture share space with hero craft markets, while music echoes from bars and cafes where time seems to move more slowly. The atmosphere is relaxed, almost hypnotic, as if the city breathes at a different rhythm. And none of this is by chance. Between 1894 and 1915, Namibia was a colony of Germany, known at the time as German Southwest Africa. During this period, European settlers founded cities, towns, and mining settlements that left deep marks, still visible today in the architecture, urban organization, and even local customs. Some of these places, like Kolmanskop, were eventually abandoned over the years. Today, they are true ghost towns, slowly being swallowed by the desert sand, surreal landscapes that we will explore later in this video. But the German influence did not remain only in the past. The German language is still widely spoken in the country, especially in the sectors of education, business, and tourism. In some African communities, including among certain Himba groups, German words and expressions are part of everyday life. A curious detail that reveals how the colonial past continues to echo in the present. This legacy can still be seen in street names, cultural festivals, and traditions that have survived over time, constantly reminding us that even in the middle of the desert, history never completely disappears, it simply transforms. The very name Namibia is born from the heart of its most unforgiving territory. It comes from the Namib Desert, considered the oldest desert on the planet, a vast expanse that covers much of the country and shaped its identity long before the existence of borders or governments. It was only in 1990 that Namibia gained its independence from South Africa, becoming a democratic republic. Even so, in the face of this ancient landscape, human history seems recent and almost insignificant. The Namib is not only ancient, it is also considered one of the most beautiful deserts in the world. Its red sand dunes create landscapes that seem to be constantly burning under the African sun. This intense color comes from pigments carried by the wind over thousands of years from the interior of the red Kalahari Desert, eventually accumulating here and forming a scene unlike anywhere else on Earth. Among these giants of sand, one dune has become a symbol of the country, Dune 45. Located 45 kilometers from the main camp of the Namib Naukluft Park, it rises to about 170 meters in height and attracts visitors from all over the world. From its summit, the view is simply mesmerizing. At sunrise, the sunlight transforms the desert into a living palette of reds, oranges, and golds that shift every minute, creating a spectacle many describe as almost unreal. But not even Dune 45 is the tallest in Namibia. In Sossusvlei, the imposing Big Daddy rises, one of the tallest dunes on the planet, standing more than 380 meters high. Climbing to the top is a true physical challenge. Every step sinks into the sand. Every movement demands extreme effort. Yet when you finally reach the summit, the reward is extraordinary. Before your eyes stretches an endless sea of sand and, just below, the surreal landscape of Deadvlei. Deadvlei is a dry valley where the trunks of petrified trees more than 900 years old still stand like black skeletons, creating a shocking contrast with the intense orange dunes surrounding them. It is a silent, almost supernatural landscape that seems frozen in time. And there is still a secret that few people know, and even fewer are lucky enough to hear. Some of these dunes actually sing. When the wind makes the fine sand slide in perfect harmony, a deep, resonant sound emerges, similar to a natural organ echoing through the desert. This phenomenon, known as singing dunes or booming dunes, can be heard on days with steady winds and has inspired legends among local communities who believe they are hearing the very voice of the desert. With an estimated population of about 2.5 million people, Namibia is one of the most sparsely populated countries in the world. Its population is made up of a rich ethnic diversity that includes groups such as the Himba, Herero, Nama, Ovambo, and many others, each with their own customs, languages, and traditions that help shape the country's identity. To understand this sense of emptiness, just look at the map. Namibia has more than 825,000 square kilometers of territory, an area comparable to Pakistan and only slightly smaller than Venezuela. Even so, its population density is so low that vast regions of the country appear completely uninhabited. It is considered the second least densely populated country in the world, behind only Mongolia. This scarcity of inhabitants is no coincidence. Namibia lies in one of the most arid and extreme regions on Earth. In parts of the Namib Desert, temperatures above 50 degrees Celsius have been recorded, while in other areas rain simply never arrives. There are places where years can pass without a single drop of water falling, such as the remote and feared Skeleton Coast, which you will discover later in this video. Even so, the country's geography is surprisingly diverse. In addition to the Namib Desert, Namibia is home to arid plains, vast plateaus, and impressive wildlife areas, such as Etosha National Park, famous for its open landscapes and the concentration of animals like elephants, rhinos, lions, and giraffes. This combination of vastness, silence, wildlife, and almost surreal landscapes has transformed Namibia into one of the most desired travel destinations in the world in recent decades. It is a country where nature still sets the rules, and where space, more than anything else, is the true protagonist. Probably the greatest attraction of Namibia is being the home of one of the most famous and instantly recognizable tribes on the planet, the Himba people. This indigenous group lives mainly in the north of the country, in the arid region of Kunen, where the extreme environment has imposed challenges that shaped a culture unlike any other in the world. In northwestern Namibia, among dry lands, rocky mountains, and landscapes that seem hostile to life, the Himba developed a way of living that balances survival and aesthetics in a surprising way. There, beauty is not just a cultural expression. It is also a tool for facing the harsh climate, showing that even in the most inhospitable places, human identity finds ways to flourish. Reaching Himba territory is, in itself, a test of endurance. The journey usually begins in Opuwo, the regional capital, and continues for hours along dirt roads that cut through the desert and wind through mountainous areas. During the rainy season, many of these paths become almost impassable, increasing the community's isolation even further. Only four-wheel drive vehicles are capable of overcoming the natural obstacles, which limits access to Himba settlements to those willing to face extreme conditions. This geographical isolation has had a double effect on the tribe. On one hand, it limited contact with the outside world. On the other, it has been a true blessing. Thanks to it, the Himba have managed to preserve their traditions, beliefs, and way of life almost intact over the centuries, resisting the pressures of modernity. They are known worldwide for their clothing and their striking body decoration. Men and women cover their skin and hair with a mixture of red ochre clay and animal fat, creating the appearance that has become the tribe's symbol. This practice goes far beyond aesthetics. It protects the skin from the scorching sun, helps repel insects, and acts as a natural barrier against the harsh desert climate. In addition, the Himba wear elaborate jewelry, bracelets, necklaces, and traditional hairstyles that indicate age, social status, and cultural belonging. Every detail carries meaning, reinforcing an identity that has resisted time and turns the human body into a true extension of the history and survival of this extraordinary people. Beyond their striking appearance, the Himba also attract attention for their social organization and cultural practices that challenge the logic of the modern world. Community life is structured around family clans, led by a tribal chief responsible for making important decisions and preserving traditions. Everything is collective: work, child-rearing, and the very survival of the group in the harsh desert environment. Among the most discussed customs is polygamy, which is widely accepted within the tribe. For the Himba, having several wives is not just a personal choice, but a symbol of status, power, and prosperity. The greater the number of wives, the higher the man's prestige within the community. This practice is directly linked to the continuity of the tribe, as it strengthens alliances between different families and clans, increasing social cohesion and ensuring a broader support network. From a practical point of view, a large family also means more hands to work. In such an arid and unpredictable environment, having more descendants makes it easier to divide household tasks, care for livestock, and manage daily life, increasing the chances of survival for the group as a whole. The process of forming marriages follows very specific rules. In Himba culture, women do not choose their husbands. The decision comes from the men and their families, who evaluate several criteria before formalizing the union. Among these are the woman's ability to perform domestic and agricultural tasks, her skill in raising children, and her reputation within the community. Although this system may seem unusual outside the tribe, for the Himba, it represents order, balance, and continuity. Each decision is seen as part of a larger cycle, where the individual exists for the family, and the family exists for the collective survival of the community. Beyond practical criteria, physical beauty also plays a central role in the selection of wives among the Himba people. A woman's appearance is valued in several aspects, such as the health of her skin, the harmony of her facial features, and her ability to properly perform the tribe's traditional body decoration. It is not just about aesthetics, but about cultural identity and belonging. Himba women are recognized worldwide for their unique beauty, and above all, for their unmistakable style. They cover their bodies and hair with a mixture of animal fat and red ochre, a practice that has been maintained for centuries. This combination works as a protective layer against the scorching sun, extreme heat, and even insects, while giving the skin the reddish tone that has become a symbol of the tribe. Elaborate jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, and traditional hairstyles complete the aesthetic, transforming the body into a living expression of Himba culture. But among all the customs of this people, perhaps none has as much impact on outsiders as the so-called wife hospitality. In this tradition, the concept of hospitality goes beyond offering food or shelter. When a foreign visitor or a close friend of the family is welcomed, The husband may offer the company of his wife or wives to spend the night. The gesture is consensual and, within Himba culture, represents respect, trust, and honor among men. For those observing from the outside, this practice may seem extreme or difficult to understand. For the Himba, however, it is part of a social system based on mutual trust, community bonds, and values very different from those of the Western world. It is a custom that once again reveals how this tribe challenges universal concepts of relationships, morality, and intimacy. Before we explore the details of this controversial practice, it is important to understand other unique aspects of this ethnic group, elements that help explain the logic behind the so-called wife-sharing tradition. Among them, one of the things that most surprises visitors who have the chance to meet the Himba is the way they build their homes. In an environment as unforgiving as the desert of northwestern Namibia, Himba architecture is a true example of ingenuity and adaptation. Their houses, known as Oimba, are built mainly from mud and cattle dung, materials that may seem unlikely at first glance but prove to be extremely effective in such an extreme environment. The dung collected from cattle is mixed with mud and applied in thick layers, forming a natural barrier against the intense heat, constant wind, and sandstorms. This technique is as old as the Himba culture itself and has been perfected over countless generations, passed down almost intuitively from parents to children. The houses have a dome-shaped structure and begin with a simple frame made of branches and wooden sticks, which serves as the skeleton of the construction. Over this base, the mixture of mud and dung is carefully applied, layer by layer. Each layer is left to dry completely under the sun before the next one is added. The final step consists of polishing the coating until it reaches a smooth and uniform surface, which not only protects the structure but also reflects sunlight in a nearly hypnotic way across the desert landscape. This architecture is not only functional, it is deeply integrated with the environment. Dung, rich in fibers and natural insulating properties, helps keep the interior of the house cool during the day and warm at night, which is essential in a region where temperature variations can be extreme within just a few hours. It represents a perfect balance between necessity and ancestral knowledge. More than simple shelters, these houses carry a strong cultural meaning. Each construction is an extension of the family and the identity of the clan. The mud coating is often decorated with symbolic drawings and patterns that tell stories, represent lineages, and express belonging. These decorations are usually made by the women of the family, turning each house into a living work of art, a reflection of pride, tradition, and the deep connection between the Himba people and the environment that surrounds them. Another characteristic that often surprises those who learn about the Himba is the fact that they do not bathe with water. And this does not happen by choice or neglect, but out of pure necessity. In Namibia, water is an extremely rare and precious resource. When it rains, the most important thing is to store this resource for drinking and ensuring the survival of the community. In the arid territory where the Himba live, rainfall is scarce and rivers practically do not exist. Faced with this extreme reality, the concept of hygiene had to adapt. Since water cannot be wasted, the Himba developed a completely different method of body cleaning, one that does not rely on a single drop of water. Instead of a traditional bath, they use a ritual based on smoke. To carry out this cleansing, members of the tribe light a small fire made from cow fat and a mixture of aromatic herbs. They then position themselves over the embers, allowing the warm smoke to envelop their bodies, skin, and clothing. This smoke penetrates deeply, leaving a characteristic aroma and creating a natural protective layer over the body. The process is surprisingly effective. In addition to helping with hygiene, the smoke acts as an insect repellent and provides additional protection against the harsh elements of the desert environment. More than a practical solution, this ritual also has a strong cultural meaning. The fumigation with aromatic herbs is part of daily life and is deeply rooted in Himba identity. The cow fat and herbs used do not serve only a functional purpose, they also carry symbolic and ceremonial value, reinforcing the connection with the tribe's ancestral traditions. This hygiene method reveals an ingenious adaptation to the limitations of the environment and demonstrates how the Himba used the few resources available to them in an intelligent and sustainable way. It may seem strange that a tribe often described as one of the most beautiful in Africa does not bathe with water, but it is precisely this ancestral technique, combined with the use of red ochre clay and aromatic smoke, that helps explain their unique appearance and reinforces the deep connection between the Himba people and the desert they call home. Another element that contributes to the striking beauty of Himba women lies in the adornments they wear on their bodies. In this society, these ornaments represent the richness and complexity of the tribe's visual culture. To feel beautiful and express who they are, women decorate themselves with an impressive variety of jewelry made of metal and cowrie shells, a marine mollusk traditionally valued in the region. These adornments are far from being simple accessories. Every detail carries a deep meaning within the community. The number of anklets a woman wears, for example, indicates how many children she has had, serving as a visible record of fertility, experience, and social status. During puberty, young girls also go through a symbolic ritual. They initially wear plastic belts, which are later replaced with metal belts after their first menstruation, officially marking their transition into adulthood. In this way, every jewel, every piece, and every ornament not only enhances physical beauty, but also tells personal and collective stories. The body becomes a living narrative, reflecting stages of life, belonging to a clan, and social position within the tribe. Now that you better understand how this society functions, it is time to learn about the most controversial tradition among the Himba. The so-called wife sharing is a practice that combines hospitality with complex social dynamics. Although it may sound shocking from an external perspective, this custom is deeply rooted in the group's traditions. When a Himba man receives important visitors, such as travelers, allies, or members of other tribes, he may offer the company of his wife or wives to the guest as a sign of respect, trust, and welcome. This gesture reinforces the importance of reciprocity and interpersonal relationships within Himba culture, while also helping strengthen bonds between families, clans, and even potential commercial or political alliances. Offering a wife does not mean a loss of status, submission, or a transfer of ownership. On the contrary, it is seen as an act of generosity and honor by the host. During this time, everyone is expected to act with respect, care, and consent, ensuring that the exchange preserves the dignity of every person involved. Once again, this practice reveals how the Himba follow their own values, shaped by a cultural logic very different from the Western one, a logic in which trust, community, and tradition stand above any external judgment. In addition, this practice reinforces the position of women as a symbol of prestige and status within the tribe, since their companionship is seen as a cultural gift of great value. The sharing of wives also reveals a very particular view of the female role in Himba society. Although at first glance it may seem like a controversial tradition, women play a significant and respected role in the decisions related to these exchanges. The wife's participation and consent are essential, and her well-being and dignity hold a central place throughout the entire process. This aspect makes it clear how gender relations in Himba culture are more complex than they may appear. There, traditional practices coexist with deep respect for women's autonomy, social importance, and value within the community, challenging simplistic judgments made from an outside perspective. And now that you understand this society a little better, one so different from our own, the question remains, with everything you've seen so far, would you spend a night with one or several Himba women? Would you sleep in their homes? Could you adapt to a life without bathing with water? What surprised you the most about this unique culture? Pause the video and leave your comment. Besides supporting us, it's always great to read your thoughts and exchange ideas with you. Thank you for watching until the end. In addition to all these curiosities, it is important to understand that Himba society is deeply marked by creativity. Every culture finds solutions using the resources it has available. While in the modern world almost everything is solved with money, in Himba villages problems are faced using two of the most valuable resources they possess: time and ingenuity. It is from this logic that truly unique solutions emerge. In some Himba villages, for example, it is possible to find ingenious improvised lighting systems, such as plastic bottles filled with water installed in the roofs of schools. During the day, sunlight passes through the water and illuminates the interior of the buildings, keeping classrooms bright and cooler. It is a simple, sustainable, and efficient solution, especially in regions where few communities have access to electricity and almost none have refrigeration systems. This creative use of available resources is a hallmark of Himba culture. Over time, they have developed techniques and ingenious tools to survive in a dry, isolated, and sparsely populated territory. Another clear example of this are the mud ovens, often known as beehive ovens. Built with clay and animal dung, these ovens are part of everyday life in the villages and are used to cook food and bake bread in an efficient and sustainable way. Those who visit these communities do not find only exotic landscapes, but also a deep and transformative cultural experience. Later in this video, you will learn about recommended routes for visiting the Himba with respect and cultural awareness. It is also essential to understand that within their traditions, there is the so-called wife hospitality, an ancestral custom in which the host may offer the company of his wife to a male guest as a sign of trust and welcome. For the Himba, this gesture does not imply obligation, nor does it carry the meaning that a Western visitor might imagine. Even so, it is a custom that often surprises unprepared tourists. For this reason, the most important thing is to always act with courtesy, explain any discomfort politely, and above all, deeply respect the culture, values, and decisions of this ancestral society. But Namibia goes far beyond the Himba. The country is home to landscapes so unique that they seem to have been created beyond Earth itself. Among them, one of the most impressive and photographed places in the world is the so-called Dead Valley, officially known as Dead Valley. Dead Valley looks like a scene taken from another planet. In the middle of the red dunes of the Namib Desert, a vast white clay pan opens up, almost blinding under the sun, where the dark remains of ancient acacia trees rise from the ground. Their twisted, dry, leafless trunks stand out like natural sculptures against a horizon of glowing sand. The scene is hypnotic. The pale ground reflects the light like a mirror, while around it rise towering walls of red dunes that seem to touch the sky. The trees, dead for about 900 years, remain almost perfectly preserved. They have not rotted, nor have they fallen. The extreme dryness of the desert prevented any decomposition, turning them into black silhouettes that seem to defy time. These trunks are silent witnesses to a distant past, when Dead Valley was not a dry valley but a lake fed by the ancient Tsokab River. As the dunes advanced and the water disappeared, life vanished, and time seemed to freeze. The Namib, one of the oldest deserts on Earth, transformed these trees into charcoal-like statues preserved by absolute dryness. The combination of skeletal trees, the white ground, and the intense red dunes creates an almost mystical atmosphere. At sunrise, when the sunlight paints the sand with shades of orange and gold, Dead Valley becomes a landscape that feels suspended between the past and a dream. It is a place that is not only seen with the eyes, but also deeply felt, attracting travelers and photographers from all over the world in search of an image impossible to forget. Hundreds of kilometers away, another geological and cultural treasure awaits those who venture into the interior of the country. Twyfelfontein, declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here, time is not measured in years, but in eras. Among reddish hills and arid landscapes lie tree trunks fossilized more than 200 million years ago, transformed into stone through natural processes that defied the passage of time and froze a piece of Earth's history. In this same place lies one of the largest concentrations of rock art in Africa. Thousands of petroglyphs depicting animals, human footprints, and symbols still surrounded by mystery were carved into the rock by ancient hunter-gatherers. Each mark is a message left by ancestral peoples, a silent record of the deep spiritual relationship between human beings and the land that sustained them. Twyfelfontein is both an archaeological site and a natural monument, offering a rare window into Namibia's distant past. But if there is one place in Namibia that is truly disturbing, fascinating, and surrounded by mystery, it is the Skeleton Coast. This desolate stretch of the country's western shoreline is known for its surreal landscape and for a name that is as unsettling as it is accurate. The Skeleton Coast received this title because of the numerous shipwrecks that have occurred in its treacherous waters over the centuries. Stranded ships and rusting hulls remain scattered along the coast, creating a scene that is both hypnotic and desolate, as if it had come straight out of a nightmare. Extreme weather conditions, violent winds, dense fog, and unpredictable currents have turned this strip of coastline into a deadly trap for sailors and explorers. As if that were not enough, whale skeletons also lie scattered across the sand, mixing with human wreckage and reinforcing the sense of absolute abandonment. Everything there seems to silently and relentlessly remind visitors of the fragility of life in the face of nature's brutal force. It is a place where the ocean and the desert meet, and where Namibia reveals its darkest, most mysterious, and unforgettable side. In addition to the numerous shipwrecks, the Skeleton Coast is also home to a surprisingly rich wildlife. Seals, seabirds, and even whales find refuge in these cold and extremely nutrient-rich waters, creating a striking contrast between the hostile appearance of the landscape and the abundance of life that manages to survive there. What few people know is that the influence of the ocean goes far beyond the shoreline. The dense fogs that cover this region can advance dozens of kilometers inland, fueled by the cold ocean current that passes along the coast. This constant fog, locally known as Kamanchaka, has become essential for the survival of plants and small animals in an environment that would otherwise be completely arid and uninhabitable. In some parts of the desert, microscopic droplets of water suspended in the air are captured by lichens, shrubs, and plants that literally drink from the fog. It is a rare phenomenon on the planet, and one of the most ingenious survival strategies observed in nature. Among these wonders is the legendary Welwitschia, an almost mythical plant considered a true living fossil of the plant world. It can live for more than 1,000 years and has only 2 giant leaves that never fall, continuing to grow and regenerate over the centuries. The region is also home to extraordinarily adapted creatures, such as the so-called fog-basking beetle. At dawn, it climbs to the top of the dunes and positions its body strategically so that droplets of moisture collect on its shell and run down into its mouth. Thanks to this ingenious method, it has become one of the few animals capable of drinking water in one of the most extreme deserts on the planet. Despite its dark and intimidating reputation, the Skeleton Coast attracts adventurers and daring travelers from all over the world, fascinated by its raw beauty and almost supernatural atmosphere. However, exploring this remote region requires caution. Conditions are extreme, infrastructure is minimal, and isolation is complete. For this reason, as a safety measure, Namibian authorities have established controlled access gates, where all vehicles must register when entering and leaving the area. This allows rescue teams to be alerted if someone breaks down or gets lost in a landscape that is as beautiful as it is unforgiving. The fact that Namibia is the second least densely populated country in the world and the least densely populated in all of Africa has an extremely positive effect. The country has become a true wildlife sanctuary. This is undoubtedly one of its greatest treasures. Here, you often don't even need to enter a reserve to encounter animals. Simply traveling along the endless dirt roads from north to south is enough to realize how nature dominates the landscape. Along these isolated routes, wildlife appears almost unexpectedly. Among the most impressive animals in the country is the desert elephant, a subspecies adapted to survive in extremely arid conditions. The black rhinoceros, sadly threatened with extinction, also lives here, as well as the feared desert lion, which, like the elephant, has developed unique abilities to endure one of the harshest environments on the planet. One of the great symbols of this abundance is Etosha National Park, one of the most famous and important national parks in Africa. Across its vast salt plains, it is possible to observe these animals, and many others, roaming freely in a landscape that seems endless. But wildlife is not limited to protected areas. Both inside and outside the park, leopards still roam, elusive and difficult to spot. And there is another little-known but remarkable fact. Namibia is the country with the largest population of cheetahs living in the wild in the world. For this reason, those who choose to travel independently must be especially cautious, particularly when deciding where to camp. In many parts of the country, it is entirely possible to encounter any of these animals along the way. In the far north, extra care is necessary, as the Cunene River region is home to giant crocodiles, considered among the most dangerous on the continent. As you approach the coast, the landscape changes once again. Coastal lagoons reveal the elegant spectacle of pink flamingos, while along the Skeleton Coast, another unforgettable sight appears: the massive seal colony at Cape Cross. It is a powerful reminder that in Namibia, nature does not merely survive, it reigns absolute, wild, and astonishing. Beyond these picturesque corners, there is a place that seems to have been abandoned by time. Kolmanskop is the most famous ghost town in Namibia. Founded in the early 20th century during the Diamond Rush, Kolmanskop once became a prosperous German settlement, complete with a hospital, school, theater, and even a bowling alley. But when the diamond deposits were exhausted, the town was gradually abandoned within just a few decades. Today, its German-style houses have been taken over by the dunes. Sand from the Namib Desert invades windows, doors, and corridors, creating an almost surreal scene where pastel-colored walls contrast with the golden tones of the desert. Walking through these half-buried buildings, hearing the silence broken only by the wind, and watching as the dunes slowly swallow the old streets, is an experience that is both unsettling and fascinating. It is a true open-air museum that reminds visitors of the fragility of human wealth in the face of the relentless force of nature. If you've made it this far, you probably want to know how to visit Namibia and make the most of this wild and surprising country. Perhaps even meet the Himba people up close. That's why Mundo Sem Filtro brings together the main information to help plan your trip. From the Americas, the most common flights depart from New York or Mexico City to Windhoek, usually with connections in Johannesburg or Frankfurt. The total travel time is typically around 24 hours. From Europe, for example, from Madrid, flights take about 14 to 15 hours, usually with a stopover in South Africa or Germany. In all cases, booking in advance usually guarantees better prices. Citizens of many countries do not need a visa for stays of up to 90 days, but it is always important to check the most recent regulations before traveling. The local currency is the Namibian dollar, which circulates alongside the South African rand, making everyday transactions easier. And so begins the journey through one of the most extreme, silent, and fascinating countries on the planet. Although the US dollar is widely accepted in hotels, safari agencies, and tourism-oriented shops, it is still advisable to understand the local currency to avoid surprises. In Namibia, the official currency is the Namibian dollar, and the exchange rate usually revolves around $1 for approximately 14.50 Namibian dollars, although this value can vary depending on the period and location. What few people realize is that Namibia is among the most affordable countries to travel to, not only in Africa, but in the world. A coffee in a local cafe usually costs less than $1. A dinner for two at a mid-range restaurant may cost around $20, and a night in a mid-range hotel often costs less than $30. This combination of affordable prices and spectacular landscapes makes the country extremely attractive for those seeking intense experiences without spending too much. Another point that positively surprises visitors is safety. Namibia is considered one of the safest countries in Africa for travelers. Unlike some other regions of the continent, the rates of crimes against tourists are relatively low. Petty theft can occur, but it tends to be concentrated in specific urban areas, mainly in Windhoek and in some parts of Swakopmund. National parks and safari regions, such as Etosha National Park or the Namib Desert, are considered extremely safe. These areas have constant monitoring and strict rules for visitors, ensuring a peaceful experience even in wild environments. Most tourists are able to travel along the country's main roads and go on safaris without any incidents, as long as they follow local authorities' recommendations and adopt basic precautions, such as not leaving valuables visible inside the vehicle. In this way, Namibia reveals itself not only as an exotic and fascinating destination, but also as accessible, organized, and surprisingly safe. In addition, getting around Namibia is relatively simple. The country's main highways are paved, and buses connect the most important cities. Still, for those who want to explore national parks, remote regions, or cross-desert areas, renting a 4x4 vehicle is the most recommended option, with average prices between $40 and $50 per day. This type of vehicle provides both autonomy and safety in terrains where regular cars simply cannot reach. For those who prefer to save time, there are also domestic flights connecting Windhoek to popular tourist destinations such as Sossusvlei, Swakopmund, and Etosha National Park. These air routes are ideal for travelers with limited time who want to make the most of their visit to the country. Safaris are the great highlight of Namibia and can be arranged either through local agencies or directly at lodges and accommodations inside the parks. A full-day safari in Etosha usually costs between $50 and $100 per person, typically including transportation and a specialized guide. For the more adventurous, the country also allows self-drive safaris, provided that travelers rent their own vehicle. This option offers a more flexible and personalized experience, but it also requires greater attention to park rules, schedules, and animal behavior. Among all the attractions in Namibia, visiting the Himba people is probably the most striking cultural experience of the entire trip. Guided tours are available that include transportation, simple accommodation, and local guides, with prices ranging from $50 to $150 per person, depending on the duration and level of exclusivity. It is essential to remember that this contact should always be carried out with absolute respect. Within their culture, the Himba may show hospitality by allowing photographs, offering close interaction, and in some cases even inviting visitors to spend the night in their homes. However, it is important not to create expectations outside the cultural context. Any gesture should be interpreted with care, respect, and sensitivity to local traditions. In Namibia, the combination of desert adventure, extraordinary wildlife observation, and encounters with ancestral cultures transforms any trip into a truly unique experience. It is a country that is safe, accessible, and deeply memorable, where nature and tradition still dictate the rhythm of life in one of the most impressive landscapes on the planet. We hope this journey through the mysteries of fascinating Namibia has been just as exciting for you as it was for us. Thinking about that and about the effort it takes to create these videos, we would truly appreciate it if you could leave us a like and a comment. It's the best way to help us keep bringing you better content every week. If you're not subscribed yet, don't waste any time. Subscribe now and activate the notification bell so you won't miss the fascinating videos we release every week, like the one you can watch right now. If you want to discover one of the most fascinating places on the planet, don't miss the opportunity and explore the wonders that this and many other incredible destinations have to offer.